All right. Hey, I'm back, Brent Leary. And man, it's been way too long since I talked to Joe Galvin, who is the Chief Research Officer for Vistage. Joe, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Brent. How are you? How are you holding up, man? You home? You safe? You healthy?
Yeah, I'm home safe. I'm getting a little bit stir crazy because you know we're usually out at some event in Vegas, usually or something like that. I'm not missing Vegas, but being in the house for a while, yeah, it's kind of get to you a little bit.
Yeah. Well, my wife and I are celebrating our 40th year of marriage this year, and I'm not sure if it's going to sustain me being home all the time.
Let's hope you make it to 41, man.
Because working from home works as long as you leave once in a while, and I'm not going anywhere for that. We'll see if 41's in our future, but we hope so.
All right, man. So you are at Vistage, and just for folks who don't know, tell us a little bit about what Vistage is and who your member audience is.
Yeah, Vistage is the world's leading executive development, executive coaching, and peer advisory service on the planet. We focus on small and mid-sized business CEOs, business owners, presidents, and key executives, providing access to an unprecedented collection of executives of expert speakers on key topics, and facilitated by the Vistage chairs, who are people that are just committed to helping their members grow both as leaders and as humans, helping to make better decisions, get better results, and become better leaders along the path. 24,500 around the world, 16,000 plus here in the States. It's an amazing community, and I've got the privilege of leading Vistage Research, which allows me to tap in to their opinions, their insights, and really understand the issues that are most important to them, and then generate our research on top of that to help them be more informed about what's going on across our community.
Well, and you were just telling me you had just got off of a member webinar with a couple of economists talking about what's going on, and that's what I definitely want to talk to you about because, well, I mean, let's face it, that's what it's on the top of everybody's mind, particularly a small business person, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and so you talk about the economy in general, we tend to get caught up in what the stock market is and isn't doing, and the stock market is like weather; it's what's going on today. Our economy is climate. That's the long-term historical trends. And again, our partners are Brian and Alan Bolio from ITR Economics. And some of the highlights they shared is that the economic fundamentals that we were coming to the end or the backside of a growth cycle and beginning other ones, those haven't fundamentally changed. That is the consumer that has driven that, and the belief that consumers still will. And that really the length of this health crisis will determine the depth of the economic crisis. Now, clearly for those in the restaurant, entertainment, discretionary income business, they're hurting immediately. For other organizations, if you're in manufacturing, is your supply chain being interrupted? And what's the impact to workers on the line? And we're seeing some real creative responses about, workers now splitting shifts. So if you do have children that aren't in school, you can stay with them during the day and come in and work on the line at night. The enhanced cleaning, a lot of the things that they're doing. In the construction space, projects continue to go on unless they're tied to school or government or some other place where you can't really access because of humans. So the economic activity continues. The question is, how long will this lull, where we're all kind of grounded, how long will that go, and how deep will that be?
And you just recently did a research. You do a lot of research, but you just put out a paper on the virus impacts on small business confidence. Yeah. Now, this was just last year. Last week.
Yeah.
And even though it's like, man, this is fresh. This is last week. There's been a lot that's happened in the past week.
It's changing so quick. I call it the corona curve. And if you would take a traditional bell curve and flip it around, that's the corona curve, where there's a trigger event. And that was when we first heard, oh, Wuhan, China's having some flu disease, right? That was a trigger. And we ignored that. We ignored that for a long time.
Your device is connected.
And then a trigger event occurs, which initially was the first stock market drip the week of March 3rd. Then last week, it was the President Trump's speech about shutting down travel. And now we're on this slippery slope to the bottom. We don't know where the bottom is. And if you think about, you're sliding down a hill at night, you're just holding on as best you can. And everything changes because we haven't yet started to find the bottom. Excuse me. In China, we're now beginning to see signs of the bottom. That we're seeing port activity open up. We've seen another day of 0 new cases. We just learned that 80% of China's factories are back operational again, and a belief that another 4 to 6 weeks they'll be at 90% capacity. So signs are beginning to emerge that they've reached the bottom. We're not there yet. So any data you look at, or we took a survey closed on March 9th. March 9th, that was a week ago Monday.
Right.
And 15.6% were extremely concerned about coronavirus. I'm sure that number would be in the 70s now.
Wow, it's moved that fast. 'Cause I know you have a
Excuse me.
Vistage CEO Confidence Index,
Yeah.
and as of last week, it went from 91.5 at the end of 2019 to 84.7 at the beginning of the year. Where do you think it is now?
Don't know. We came into this year under the premise that the slowdown was slowing. It's time to prepare for prosperity. And then a black swan event occurs. A black swan event is an event that's totally unpredictable, has a lasting and long-term effect. And in retrospect, maybe we should have recognized this was going to happen. 9/11 is a great example. It happened suddenly. It had a profound and long-term effect on us. And in retrospect, maybe we should have thought about that this could happen. Now, clearly, we've had movies like Contagion and Outbreak about pandemics before. Different government agencies have grown or shrunk over time. But to be surprised that this happened now, in retrospect, oh yeah, we should have seen it. But in the meantime, we're all scrambling as we go down that slope, trying to find the bottom. Because until we get to the bottom, we can't assess the damage. It's like we're sitting in the middle of a hurricane and it's still raging.
Right.
And we can't go outside to see if the tree's down or if our neighbors need help just yet. Once the storm passes, you can assess the damage, and then it'll be able to path forward.
Well, you don't even know how far along you are in the storm either.
Right. So there's a strong belief, and this continues, that this will be a V-shaped event, that once we do get to the bottom and we've sorted out the health issues, then we'll quickly be able to recycle. And I'm sure the first to go out will be the last to come back. So, order from your local restaurant and have them delivered. Do what you can to support those people and those businesses that you frequent that are going to be affected immediately by this. And over time, we're all going to feel this crunch. And quite frankly, some folks you're being rewarded and punished today for some of the decisions you made in the past. So I know you're a big digital transformation advocate, as am I. Well, those organizations that have moved much further down that digital path are much better prepared to ride this out. Where if you continue to be dominated by analog human processes and interactions, you're at greater risk and greater threat, right? So I think that we'll see, we get to the other side, I think we'll see a real change in how people embrace digital. This whole work from home concept, you and I have been doing it for years, but for a lot of organizations, this is a whole new thing. It's a whole new set of behaviors. Right. And they never went to it because they never did, but now they have to. We'll see some real evolution, I think, in how we embrace technology.
Let's talk about, you mentioned digital transformation, and I know previously we had a conversation that started with digital transition before we even got to transformation. Yeah. And what it looked like back then. What is digital transformation from an SMB perspective going to look like after we get past this hurdle?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll have to sort out with time. But I think you'll see some organizations, small, mid-sized businesses, are already thriving in this environment. Those folks that are in tech, those folks that are in outsourced technology or cyber still a real issue. Those people are all thriving. In fact, some of these pure digital companies that support the digital environment, they're going to do much better because so much energy is coming towards them as opposed to the physical world. It'll radically, it'll accelerate the death of brick and mortar, but humans will still want to gather, so the entertainment stuff will come back. I think for small and mid-sized business, it's going to reinforce and reward those who have done the prudent financial planning, folks that maintain an adequate cash flow and cash on hand, people that have arranged for and already have a line of credit with their local banker. The government's going to throw a ton of money into the Small Business Administration. In fact, we're going to post something on that on our website later today for folks. But the SBA is just a small little government agency. It's not prepared to scale to pass out trillions of dollars. So it shouldn't be your first line of defense, but no, it exists there. HR 6201, which extends the unemployment insurance, some of the implications about providing tax credits for that and some of the nuances. That too will be in place with time, and we'll sort that out. But in the short term, you got to get with your local banker and make sure you're in a good place. Having said that, when you get to the other side, we will be at a lifetime low interest rates, both business-wise and personally. It'll never get lower in your lifetime than what will be coming out of this. So establish that line of credit. Maybe do a refinance. I've got a daughter and son-in-law who are on the cusp of buying a house because, it's craziness out there, but the interest rates are lifetime. I mean, this is unbelievable. So there'll be opportunities when we get to the other side, but until we get to the bottom of the corona curve, we're just scrambling to survive, and we won't really know how to dig out until we know how deep we're in.
So what can the government actually do? We're seeing a lot of the Congress and the Senate. They're talking about doing these different bills. I know one just got signed. I think that was the one that was around making tests free and available to people.
Yeah.
But the second and the third bill seems to be more focused on getting individual help and then getting business help, bailouts, if some people call it that. But let's face it, small businesses like the traditional mom and pops or the traditional meat and potatoes main street small businesses, they don't have lobbyists that are in DC that are looking out for their interests in bringing them the money. So what can be expected really from the government when it comes to assisting those kind of small businesses?
I think in the longer term, you'll see the government there, but the federal government doesn't move quick on anything or for anything. And irrespective of your political positions in these current times, the government just functions that way. So I think the immediate concern is, our economy is driven by the consumer. The consumer represents 2/3 of our GDP. Consumers are home; they're grounded, and those businesses, restaurants, all the ones we've been talking about, those people are going to be hurt right away. So the unemployment insurance, the understanding that they will continue to receive a paycheck, and if they do get furloughed or laid off, there will be an opportunity for them to access funds. I think that's really important. The small and mid-sized businesses, both through their local bankers and through government-supported programs, have the ability to get the bridge loans and the funds they need to stay in business. Because again, depending on how long the health crisis exists, is how deep the economic crisis is going to be and how quick we can ramp up. So I would like to see more done addressing the unemployment issues. I know there's talk about $1,000 to every family. Well, for those of us able to continue to work and are really financially solid companies, I would rather see that money directed to those people that are in need.
Right.
The people that live in the hourly wage or the gig economy, the Uber drivers that you and I use on a regular basis, the waitresses at the place, the people that clean the rooms in the hotels for those of us that are business travelers. I would like to see more energy directed towards ensuring those consumers can maintain their space in society. So when the opportunity to work comes back, they can slide back in without a devastating financial effect or, the real promise of hunger in our country in places that we haven't experienced it before. So I'd like to see more directed towards consumer support and the ability to help small and mid-sized businesses. I think our big businesses got a big boost in the tax cuts, and many of them chose to do a variety of things with that money these days. But they've got the wherewithal and the resources to take care of their own. We really have to rally around, I think, around our small businesses and more importantly, the people that work for them to help them get through this period of time because we'll all have to recover through this together.
I hate to ask this, but it's got to be asked. What are the kind of industries that, from a small business perspective, may not come back?
Well, I think it's not about segments, but about individual businesses. Clearly, in the restaurant business, that's going to hurt. There are no small business airlines except for maybe some commuter, retail, high-end jet kind of things, and I'm not really going to worry about that. I think some of your manufacturers are going to get really hurt. Let's assume now that China gets geared back up, and let's assume that you are somewhere in that supply chain. Lean manufacturing was a great concept. Just-in-time inventory was super for the CFO trying to manage cash and inventory. But right now, you can produce as long as you have inventory and as long as your supply chain continues to function. So there will be a ripple, especially if you're connected to China. But we saw a lot of the folks that were affected by the tariff wars that are still going on are the same people that are getting hurt now in the Corona crunch. So I think there'll be some carnage there. I call it the Corona carnage. There'll be some carnage there. But again, those businesses that have good, solid relationships with their customers, I think you'll be rewarded and punished going forward based on how you treat your employees during this period of time and how you treat your customers. I personally am extremely pissed off at one of my most important travel partners, specifically because of the way they treated a certain situation. And they will be subsequently punished on the other side of this, just as another one stepped up for me big time, and they'll be rewarded. So you got to appreciate the fact that in loyalty with customers and with employees, your trust is based upon a history of interactions and is strongly influenced by the most powerful. And this is a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift, everybody goes back to zero. Whatever you did before, whatever good guy credits or hero points you got, don't matter. What have you done since this effect? So I caution people. I said, think carefully about how you treat people, the people that work for you and the people that use your product today, because memories are long and crises are short, and you will be rewarded or punished on the other side of this based on how you behave today.
So I got two things I want to ask you around that because that's really fascinating. What about the kind of companies that had tattered reputations, and they earned those tattered reputations in the past, but at a time like this, step up. So I'm thinking like a Facebook. Facebook, we know they've had their issues,
Yeah.
a lot of issues in the past, but they seem to actually really be stepping up in a real time of need right now. What do you think about them?
Well, again, this is we don't know where the bottom is, so we don't know how dramatic impact this will be. So we're making guesses as we go down that slope.
Right.
But I think again, you're in a time of crisis. Your most recent interaction tends to dominate interactions in a world before. Right now, if you've got a 20-year relationship with someone and they go left instead of right during this time, you're more likely to forgive them. If you've only done business with someone a couple times, or you don't have a strong relationship anymore, or you said it had a not so good reputation to begin with, that's where you start from. So yeah, you might be able to help yourself, but again, once this passes, you fall back into those prior behaviors, you go right back to where you were. So it will be as short or as long term as the consistency of your behavior. But again, it's we tend to like zero in on us and survivability, which is what you do. But all those actions and behaviors, especially as a leader in your organization, I mean, everybody's a little spooked.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to feel confident about your job and your company's ability to survive. Everybody's spooked. If you're not spooked, then I need to know what liquor store you go to. And as we get out of it, that scar will remain, and that will blot out a lot of what happened in the before CV. Call it what do you call it? BCV, before coronavirus, right? And when we get to the other side, those experiences, I think, will have a much stronger impact than in a normal day-to-day world.
Let me ask you about Amazon. Amazon has done some really interesting things. Two kind of connected. They said, "Hey, we're going to hire 100,000 more people and pay them a couple of bucks more per hour to help in the fulfillment centers." And then they also said that they are going to, and this is kind of on the small biz side, if you're not selling items that are deemed to be necessities, essentials, don't send them into the fulfillment center, because right now we're focused on, streamlining the process of getting the things that people need to them. So there's like, that's kind of a hardship on small businesses, but for the greater good, from a customer perspective, how do small businesses kind of view Amazon at this point?
Well, I think for those that are tied up in that ecosystem and sit outside those essentials, it's a big worry, because now your business is on hiatus. If you're a digital business tied to this digital platform and they said, look, we're going to, your stuff's not going on the digital shelves these days, that's obviously going to be a problem. The question is, how long will that last? I mean, quite frankly, our online shopping behavior probably hasn't altered that much. I mean, there's things that we're ordering that we really need to order that now. But again, by ordering that, you're putting money into the economy and you're doing consumer spending.
Right.
A couple other thoughts too that triggered is, if this had happened 20 years ago, before Amazon, before Facebook, before the internet, think how crazy this would be.
Wow.
Right. And even, the other thought too we had is if this were occurring in November, when it's getting darker and colder. Now the Southern Hemisphere, it's going the other way, obviously, but now it's getting lighter and warmer. Could you imagine how much darker this might be? So I think it speaks to one that our humanity has stepped forward, so far forward into digital and into technology, that we're much better to ride this out and to be able to achieve some level of normalcy and understanding. In the absence of this, in the absence of that communication, we'd all be spinning dark tales, because in absence of information, our brains will fill that void, and with all types of reasons to maybe throw the dog in the local volcano as a sacrifice. Right? That's what we would have done. We would have thrown something in a volcano 500 years ago. I know.
That's a thought. So what are one of the two things that maybe we haven't talked about that you're hearing from your small business executive membership that is still on their mind, or is still pressing on them, that maybe it's below the surface that we aren't hearing about in the media?
One of the things we have in Vistage is we have our networks, which allows members across the country, around the world, to communicate in digital platforms. And we've been mining those and listening to those. We've created a coronavirus network specifically to help our members communicate beyond their local groups. And we're starting to see questions now come out about, how do I deal with customers, right? My customers are asking for a deferment, or they're canceling, or they're saying, look, I can't pay you for 90 days. So again, your customers will reward or punish you based on how you behave. So how do you now answer those customer questions, right? Do you become draconian and say, pay me or go in default, or do you work through that? Or if you've got a sales team that used to work in a big call center and dial for dollars and high five each other, rallying up every day, and now everybody's at home. How do you manage that distributed sales force? And then as you get a little bit deeper into this, say, well, hey, I couldn't make my quarterly call. I couldn't make my quarterly bonus a goal because nobody's buying. All those proposals, those companies that got the fiscal year of March 31 and they're waiting for that big fourth quarter hockey stick. Thanks for playing. That kind of stuff isn't going to happen. So how are you going to recalibrate on the sales side and on the customer side? There's a lot of energy on the finance side, and we touched on that with the SBA program, HR 6201, and some of the other things that people are doing on the finance side. But I think there's a big talent issue that goes on. We had just, February unemployment was at 3.5%, effectively full employment. And the talent wars were the top raging issue. And you know what? There's a truce in the talent wars right now, right? Some people are continuing to hire, but most people are saying, you know what? I'm going to hold off right now because I just don't know, right? Some companies are going to have to release people. And people who are good employees are now going to be free agents in the market. And as I said, once we get through this and we get to the other side and we start to climb out, you're going to see a reverse game of musical chairs, where everybody's going to be walking around, but instead of chairs being taken away, more chairs will be added every day as restaurants want to scale up, manufacturers want to scale back up, and they're going to go back to their employees who they had to let go. And if they treated them right on the way out, they'll come back. If they didn't, there'll be opportunity amundo. And we know a lot of people stay in their jobs just because it's easier to stay in your job. But once you're out, you're out. And again, you will be rewarded or punished based upon how you created your culture leading up to this, how you execute on your culture. Is it consistent with what you said? Or did you have a culture that said employees first and now you're behaving exactly differently? And will you be rewarded on the backside for that? Because again, we'll get through this at some point in time. There will be greater pain for some sectors than others. But when you get to the other side, the decisions you make today will have a big standing about how long and how hard it is for you to climb out, and then what that new normal is going to look like at some point, hopefully the not too distant future. It's so volatile right now. Until you get to the bottom, you're just holding on, trying to stop from sliding all the way down. It's again a black swan event, totally unpredictable. Will have a lasting and profound impact. And you know what? We should have seen this coming. And in fact, we did see it coming. We just chose to do nothing about it.
Man. All right, Joe. So where can people learn more or pick up some of this research?
Go to vistage.com. That's our homepage. Go to the Research Center. We've got a lot of content. We're making it available to all small, mid-sized, well, to everyone anyway. We want to help everyone get through this. And we're going to be, again, tapping into our amazing community of experts on a variety of topics. We had someone from Johns Hopkins Health. We've got someone come up from the University of Stanford. We're going to be digging into some of the employment issues in the next week or so, hopefully. So we're going to, as we hear from folks what the threat is, we're going to try to pull up experts to talk to that. But understand, as we're on this downward slope, everything will change and evolve until we get to the bottom. We establish what that new normal looks like. We can assess the level of damage and then make good decisions to start to move into a recovery phase that hopefully will be sharp and up and to the right. But in the meantime, stay home.
Groups like yours are great because at this time, I mean, a lot of small businesses and small businesses, entrepreneurs, startups, a lot of those folks feel kind of isolated just in general without these kind of events going on. But when you add on these kind of events, it really layers on the isolation. And so having a group like that to be able to feel like you're not alone as this stuff goes on, I think that's as incredibly important as some of the other things we just talked about.
It is so true, because you don't want to try to figure this out by yourself. It's hard to be a CEO because, yeah, you operate in isolation, right? Only other CEOs can appreciate what that isolation is. Well, now as you're scrambling, trying to get your finance and your cash in shape, dealing with your employees, worrying about your customers, worrying about your employees and their families, you're not the only one fretting about that. And again, that's the power of our groups and the power of our chairs, is that those communities have been engaged on this immediately. And I'm just fortunate that I'm part of this community that I can reach in and tap into what these folks are talking about, the men and women that we have in our CEOs, and learn from that and share that, because collectively we will all get through this. I mean, we'll have some bruises, and some of us will have more than others, but we will get through it. And when we get to the other side, there'll be some excellent learnings from that. We hope to tap into that and share it with people. And Brett, the service you provide of sharing this and amplifying this out to the community is so valuable. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to spend a few minutes with your community. I invite them, come to vistage.com. We share everything.
Hey, it's been way too long since we talked, so I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing this information, because we're all in the same boat here. So
well, we're going to accelerate our survey schedule in our community. So maybe I'll reach out to you early April when we got some more results and kind of see where that downward curve is, because I'm sure it's a lot lower today than it was a week ago. Well, 10 days ago now when we closed the survey.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see that. Yeah. All right, Joe. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.